Greetings, readers and travelers, and welcome to another episode of Stats on Stats. My name is Richard Stevens, and as always, I am joined alongside by my co-host, Joel Harvey. Joel, how are we doing today?
Pretty sore, honestly. We went to the gym last night and got a workout in. But other than that, I'm excited for this show, and I think it's going to be fantastic.
Same here, and you know what? I'm also feeling the soreness because that was the first time I've been to the gym probably in I don't even know how long, so I don't even want to think about it, to be honest. But today, we are joined for the first time by one of our favorite authors in the Lit RPG community, Mr. Justin Monroe. Justin, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you on, that's for sure. So, before have a few little things to go over really quickly, just a few little housekeepings. We still have our giveaways that we have going on. Last show we had the complete series of Dungeon Crawler Carl up to date. Zeckler is now in the chat saying thank God for lunch hours. So Zeckler, we're excited to have you in the chat. We love to see you there, buddy. For our giveaways that we still have coming up, if we hit 100 subscribers on YouTube, 15 subscribers on Twitch, and 200 followers on Twitch, we have 3 more giveaways planned. And it's a complete series up to your choice. I know we have codes for Darklands Online, Cyber Squad, Z Locked In. We got codes for a lot of stuff right now to give away. That Audible sell, it really came in clutch. But let's go ahead and dive into today's show. Listen to a series called Z Locked In. I remember seeing it for the first time because I saw this really badass cover of a guy and a wolf sitting on the front. That's what pulled me in.
Yeah.
Joel, what was your first introduction into Z?
I think
Hold on.
we good?
I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah, I think our buddy Zeckler told me about it.
Zeckler tells us about a lot of books.
Yeah.
So that could be it too. I remember seeing the cover in one of the groups. I can't remember which group. It might have been the actual Lit RPG group. It might have been the Lit RPG forum too. Paul Bellows group, because there's a lot of good stuff in that group too. So, but Justin,
I promo all over those places.
hey, we love seeing promos. My wallet hates it, but we love seeing it. So, Justin, why don't you give us a little bit of a background of yourself, and then we'll dive into Z.
Oh, background of me. Well, I'm a California native from the Bay Area, currently in Massachusetts. I spent my first career about 20 years in hotels, working hospitality, and worked my way up through the ranks there. And then about 3 years ago became a full-time stay-at-home dad. I wrote most of Z Locked In during the slow season at my last hotel job, and then finished it up during nap times after coming home. And then, pushed it up that hill to get it out there, which was, I'm sure any author would say a much harder process than I anticipated, but very rewarding.
I know writing can be a little challenging, but it's funny you said you were in the hotel industry, because that's actually what my current job is.
Oh yeah,
I'm a front desk supervisor at a hotel, so
yeah. I have been a front desk supervisor. I've done every front office job. I was a director of rooms for a Sheridan property when I left my corporate overlords.
We love the corporate overlords. I'm not saying which hotel I work for because I don't want to get canned. So give us the premise of what Z Locked In is about.
So it touches on some of those classic lit RPG tropes. So it's a VR game, VR MMORPG setting, and Z commits a crime, for arguably noble reasons, and gets sent to jail in a dystopic American future. And as part of his jail sentence, he qualified as a player to be logged into Overworld Online and serve out his prison term there, where the mega corporation that runs the game, as well as the Department of Corrections, is using his excess brain power to mine cryptocurrency to pay off his prison term. And that brings Z into a high fantasy setting where he starts to figure out, as most protagonists do, that not everything is as it seems.
Not everything is as it seems, and that is a trope we
not
love.
everything is as it seems.
Yeah, no, that's a trope we love.
Sure.
That's one of my favorite tropes because there's more behind the curtain, and I can't wait to see. In your book, I knew something was off from the get go. As soon as I met Mocha, I was like, oh yeah, something's off. Something's not right here. So, when the book opens, we are following Z when he works at a...
Yeah, he's a graveyard janitor.
Third shift. Love to see it. You're a third shifter. Other than, hospital, you do retail. Anyways. He decides he wants to steal a cure for his mom because the treatments and everything are pretty expensive, and he doesn't want his mom to die. Pretty do the same thing, not gonna lie.
Yeah, for sure.
He gets arrested, gets sent to jail, but he saves his mom's life.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really like as far as that whole scene going down is that, like, he gets arrested. He's like, I did this on my own will. You have nothing to do with it. Don't try and get involved. Don't try and make it worse.
Yeah.
And that, to me, just showed, like, his character from the get-go.
It's a pretty noble character. But I do want to point out that the book opens with him watching an episode of Doctor Who. And not only is he watching an episode of Doctor Who, he's watching one of my favorite episodes of Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
The Silence in the Library. Love it. We'd love to see it.
Gotta love the references.
But once he gets into game, there's another Doctor Who reference. And Justin,
all over the place.
And Justin, I told you I was going to ask you about this because your answer determines my reaction. Because Joel knows how I'm going to react, depending on your answer. Once he meets he sees his AI companion realizing that they're going to be kind of with him throughout the whole experience, he says he wishes he chose a different character model. Like Clara Oswald from Doctor Who. Now, which Clara is it? Is it Matt Smith Clara or Peter opinion? Her tone changes completely.
It's definitely the Matt Smith.
Okay,
Clara
I can accept it. I can accept it. All right, Joel, take it away.
Yeah. So, he gets arrested. And he's taken away to this,
prison facility.
Yeah.
We don't like prisons.
Kinda. Where he's, getting prepped for going into the pods. And that's where he meets, Maka, I believe.
It is. But let's talk about the pods for a second, because the pods, they take a strain on him. And like everyone.
Yeah.
Well, certainly all the prisoners. If you've got the money, you can have a much better pod, but that's not he's not getting the premium experience for sure.
So, what was your decision when coming to doing the pods instead of just like a VR helmet and like a, I want to say like laying down in like an immersion chair or something?
I didn't want to worry about, at the time, I didn't want to worry about Z having to be logged out periodically. And I didn't want to deal with time compression type stuff, where maybe things are going by faster in the game world than out in the real world. And just a couple of just logistical type things that I didn't want to be an issue while writing. And so I went for the full immersion pod as opposed to something more temporary, because the body needed to be cared for during that time,
Right.
and sustained. And even if it's not being sustained super well, it is still being kept alive. So that's the why I went for the pods, was purely from a problem solving mechanical standpoint for myself.
Well, I mean, we love to see I honestly like full immersion pods over like just a VR helmet and like a haptic suit. I feel like the pods would give a more realistic feeling for like with the water or gels inside going around stimulating.
Well, and it's still a direct neural connection, right?
Right.
I could have done that without a pod. Lots of writers have done that. But again, like, what's happening whenever that comes up? It's like, well, then how is the body being cared for? And that's where it's like, well, we got to make this like a full auto nurse type situation, where it's able to do some maintenance on the body for him.
The way I see the difference between a neural connection and, or like just a straight neural connection without the pod, is they're just kind of, you know, laying there on a bed. Yeah, they could do the time dilation and everything, but it really doesn't. I feel like that's more for the higher class than it would be a prisoner.
Sure. Yeah.
So once he gets in game, he gets to decide his class and all of that fun stuff. Why did you pick the class he chose?
That was purely personal reasons.
All right.
I love Rangers in tabletop RPGs. I'm an with back in the day was a big Drizzt Do'Urden fanboy. So I love two weapon fighting Rangers, not purely archery based Rangers. And it was at the time the class that I would have picked for myself. And this kind of, I started out writing this as something I did in the evenings while we were watching TV and stuff, and just a super casual project. Just, I hadn't written much of anything since high school, and I started out with character generation and then went back and layered in the all the early chapters as I started figuring out who Z was. And so it started out as a ranger just because that's what I would have picked.
Okay. Now, first off, shout out to R.A. Salvatore, because the Drizzt books are some of my favorite books. And I picked up the new Dark Alliance game just to play him. That game was a disappointment,
Yeah.
but I picked it up just to play him. And I ended up not even playing him.
I almost picked up the whole Legend of Drizzt on Audible during this last big end of summer sale. And held back at just the last minute, but I almost did it.
I was going through Kindle one day, and I was like, oh, I'll see how many of the Drizzt books there are. Of the, just the original books.
Yeah.
And then my Kindle glitched and said, buy all?
Uh-oh.
So I bought $220 worth of books. I tried contacting Amazon, and Amazon was like, oh yeah, we can refund you for all of them. And I still have 2 in my library.
Oh.
And it's
Jackpot.
It's like 12 and 11. It's books 12 and 11. I was like, that's not where I want to be. Come on.
Yeah.
So, once we get in game, he starts realizing that, he's kind of a special individual.
Mm-hmm.
Talk us through where you were wanting to go with this.
I mean, every main character needs something unique about them, something that makes them special, something that makes it the reason why I'm telling their story and not someone else's. But at the same time, I wanted to introduce a mystery. I wanted to introduce something special about Z, but not something that was going to make him overpowered or drastically change the game for him. It would have long-term implications, but in the moment, it really only made more problems for him than solving anything.
Gotcha. Okay. Now let's talk about the narration, because the narration is amazing. And
yeah, Gary's great.
Oh, Gary is awesome. Tell us a little bit about Gary for the people who want to listen to the actual Audible version instead of pulling out the Kindle.
Well, I mostly know Gary through Twitter and social media, because he's been an amazing partner to work with since Podium hooked us up. So he's definitely plugged into the nerdy side of things so that he gets the references. And I love what he does when performing specifically for the Doctor. I think he does a pretty good Al for Z's AI companion. But what he does for his David Tennant is, without going full accent impression, it's a nice little subtle twist on it that just gives it the hint of the accent, so that you know the voice is different. But he really, at every opportunity, nails that for me.
It's really good. It's really good.
Yeah. So and he and I, exchange TikToks occasionally, or give each other a hard time on Twitter. He's a fun guy, and it's funny. When I was working with Podium to select a narrator and getting together my shortlist for them, I hadn't listened. I went through and kind of pulled together a list of all the narrators that they work with, and then started kind of weeding out who I could see being Z's voice. And I hadn't listened to a book narrated by Gary yet, but I had one in my library, which was the Dragon Mage thing, the Good Luck Charlie series.
I've not read that one.
And so I listened to, or Bad Luck Charlie. I listened to the first book of that, and it was an interesting book, and I got through to the end, and it's a bit of a ride. I'm not bashing it. It's a very popular series. I didn't connect with it by the end, but I got through it because of Gary's narration, and that got him onto my short list of narrators that I would be happy if Podium got for me. So I was super excited when they
Wild Card Charlie?
It was, I think,
or the Dragon Mage. Yeah, the Dragon Mage series.
The Dragon Mage series.
Okay.
Yeah, the first book is like Bad Luck Charlie or something like that.
Oh, each title has Charlie in it. Okay.
Yeah.
I might check it out, because this was my introduction. I remember when we originally first connected on Twitter about it. You were going to send us a review copy of a paperback, but I was working ungodly hours. I was like, I'm afraid I'm not going to finish it.
Yeah.
And now I'm powering through books like almost every other day, because I work at a hotel and it's kind of slow when we're sold out.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Oh, no, I said that right. Yeah. Kind of slow when we're sold out. So when you said Gary, my initial reaction, because the only Gary I knew of in narration was Gary Furlong. And you're like, no, not Gary Furlong. I was like, oh. And then I listened to the sample of the book. I was like, oh, this is good.
Yeah,
this is really
great.
good. Which, if you have Audible Plus, it is in the Plus catalog for the first book. And it is worth the listen, guys. If you need a good 11-hour book, it's a fun time. A lot of pop culture references. If I could speak properly, that would be fantastic. There's a lot of pop culture references, a lot of nerdy references, and that's one thing we love. I get I get overstimulated easily, but when I have those like nice nerdy references, it's just beautiful stuff for my brainwaves, and I love it. Joel, what do you want to talk about?
I don't know. What do I always talk about?
Let's talk about the mechanics.
Yeah. So, getting into the game, he who's his like guide that he meets?
Starts with an L. Oh my god.
Lemuric.
Limerick. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he meets him, and one thing I want to highlight is that whenever he gets his class and skills, there's like a guided skill. Like it'll show you, hey, swing like this,
or the training guide. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then he has that for both bows and swords, but Limerick, he's like, this isn't gonna tell you when you need to retreat. It's just gonna say like, yeah. So that was a cool moment.
It's kind of like a user discretion type thing of like, hey, know when you're going a little too hard.
Yeah. Other than that, I will say the dungeon design for the Goblin Keep was just awesome. I loved that. With like the pop culture references and the like puzzle golems that they have to get through.
I like the elf fetish.
Elf fetish?
Someone's been reading my Audible reviews.
Actually, no, I haven't looked at any of the reviews.
There was a Reddit thread about that too, where I got accused of being a little too thirsty for elves. So
okay, let's. I was just actually cracking a joke about that, but let's actually dive into that really quickly. I'm not accusing you or anything because there's nothing wrong with thinking elves are beautiful. There's nothing wrong.
Kind of supposed to be, right?
Elves are supposed to be elegant, beautiful creatures, have a very high charisma. Let's take the biggest example, real quick. Lord of the Rings. Let's look at the Lord of the Rings elves, especially in the movies.
Sure.
Whew. There's not a single bad-looking elf in either the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbits.
Mm-hmm.
Only thirsty for drow. Yes, Seckler, we know. But, there's nothing wrong with liking elves. I was just making a joke about it because of one of the comments he makes, because the first... And she's...
Yeah.
What, the noob succubus or something like that is the name that they give her?
I don't remember what her like name was, but she she has like a high charisma score.
And he's like, do I just have a thing for elves? Because when he meets Mocha, she's also an elf.
Yeah, there are a lot of elves. Because Limmer...
There are a lot of elves,
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with elves. Like, I have a thing for dwarves. Dwarves are my favorite race in all of...
I honestly didn't even think about it till like you just mentioned it. But...
Well, he makes a joke in the, like, I think it's like a couple hours in, he's just like, do I have an elf fetish? And it's like, yeah, you might, buddy. You might.
Well, and it's funny because in the first draft, Z was a human, too.
Right.
In his original build. And that changed between when I posted on Royal Road and what went live in the ebook. During the editing process, he became a half elf for his build for a variety of reasons. But it certainly added to the, do I just have a thing for elves? I guess so. So
elves are awesome.
Yeah. And isn't there like a starting area for like race specific, or am I wrong there?
There's
there is a. I don't really describe it too much.
There's the inn where he sleeps.
No, yeah, but like I think they mentioned like a different starting areas for different races, but because he was a prisoner, he like was
exactly. It's kind of a premium option. If you want to start in the elf homeland and be an elf, you can. You just got to pay them more. I had a lot of microtransactions on the mind as I wrote this book, so that I see no reason why that would go away in the 40 years between now and when the book takes place. And they're going to find a way to milk every last dollar or credit out of their players. So,
because financials are not fun. We don't like the financial aspects of life right now.
That and just like IRL in this book is so ran down. It honestly reminded me a lot of the Netrunner series that came out,
okay.
where they're like financially going down the toilet. David
Yeah.
was, and
Super late stage capitalism. So,
yeah,
We love cyberpunk dystopias.
yep. I don't do it nearly as well as Masakat, but I'm glad it came through in those early chapters. We'll get some more time outside of the game, probably in book 4, if what I have outlined comes to fruition.
Gotcha. So we do have a question coming from one of our VIPs, admin, moderator. He's
What's up,
everything. Zach? It's Zeckler. He says the pain sensors seem to be a large part of the story. What was the main reasoning to putting that in?
Among many reasons, I needed I needed to add in some downsides for being a prisoner player. That obviously you can get more control if you have your freedom, but it can't be all sunshine and roses for Z after committing his crime and getting logged into this world. As it is, it's still a little. There are readers who look at it and think that they're like, why would I feel bad for this guy? And there's some fairness to that, but definitely the pain reception played a role in how I made it clear that this wasn't all upside for Z.
Okay. Now, I have a question about a possible, not, I guess, a possible future setting. If you were to do, another series, would you do another fantasy type series, or would you do more of, a sci-fi cyberpunk series on, I would say the terms of, Shadowrunners, stuff like that, where you still have, the races, but it's more futuristic, they have the tech, all that stuff?
I have some things like that on my list of stuff I'd like to work on in the future. The thing that I'm working on, aside from book 3 right now, is another fantasy setting.
Okay.
That's more of a not portal. It's a reincarnation. He gets reincarnated on another world, and the briefest pitch is the main character gets reincarnated in this fantasy world with a system and becomes a wizard, becomes an adventurer, goes into his first dungeon and gets his entire party killed and gets out alive and ends up becoming an innkeeper instead. And
I like that.
Yeah, it'll have it'll be a little bit more. It'll be way less action oriented and pull on some of my lingering trauma from working in hotels for 20 years. So,
oh, I'm definitely gonna read that one. I have some horror stories there.
One of the thing I love most about authors is when they put personal experiences into their books. So yeah, that sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, because one of my favorite examples is Anna Mosicat, or AK Mosicat, who does the Cyber Squad series. Used to do game development. She told us that on when we first had her on. So her whole premise behind that, giving us a behind the scenes thing of game testing and all that stuff. Yeah. That's really cool. I like that a lot. Now, Innkeepers. I'm interested. You piqued my interest now, Justin. Come on. If you need a beta reader for that one, you let me know, because I will.
Well, I've got a couple early chapters up on Patreon already, but it's still a good ways away from being ready for prime time at this point. So I'm about 9 chapters in.
Well, the reason I asked about the cyberpunky stuff is one of our viewers, Jay Bruce. He's a really, really cool guy. I actually met him through the hotel. He was one of our guests that stayed, and he has a on his Twitch channel, he does a tabletop Shadowrunners game every week.
Oh, okay.
And it's really cool. Saw his name pop up. I was like, oh, I gotta ask this specifically for him.
Yeah.
But also for me, because I do like a futuristic cyberpunky dystopia, but without the like, everyone being human. I want mythical races in the future.
And I see that. I have like a couple of system apocalypse type or lit RPG apocalypse type stories in mind, and could see touching on some of that in the future, but also more of that cyberpunk Shadowrunny type feel.
Okay.
For sure. I get a little lost in the weeds as things get too sci-fi sometimes.
Nothing wrong with that.
Because I get too lost in fantasy. At a certain point, you can just call it magic, and I've always preferred harder sci-fi, so I have a harder time of just making my technology so advanced that it's basically just magic.
So what you're saying is, you get locked in.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now that I've done my horrible pun for the day, Zeckler has also asked, do you plan to have more stories set in OVR?
I would like to do some short stories. I've just never. Every time I try to write a short story, it becomes too long. So, I would like to do some short stories set in Overworld that would be about other characters, and who knows? Like when I get done with Z's tale, I'll see where that takes me. I think there's lots of fun stuff to do in there. I made it a very Z starts out in this fantasy world, but I mentioned throughout the book that there's the reason it's called Overworld is there are other worlds that he can go to, that they can go to. There's a Western world, and there's a spy setting, and there's urban fantasy, and there's all that. So that the options are limitless in terms of kind of subgenre that I could play with there.
There's not enough lit RPGs that do that. I only know of 2 that come to mind with that.
Working out one game system and one set of stats is hard enough.
Right. So, no, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I would love to definitely see more of that, because the only ones that I can think of are the Kings League series, and then Harmon Cooper's like Feedback Loop, Fantasy Nova Online. Like,
there's Ready Player One. I know has like a bunch of worlds thrown in there.
Ready Player One's is more game lit than lit RPG.
Well,
I mean, yes, it was a stepping point for us, but
yeah, that was my infection point too.
It was a lot of people's infection.
Yeah,
and everything's better than Ready Player 2. So
it was a mainstream title, and it was, the audiobook was done by Will Wheaton,
he did a good job.
A copy of the book in one of my loot crates when I was a subscriber to that. Like it had far and wide reach to get people sucked in. So
it's a great series. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love that it was a good stepping point for us.
Yeah, I think
I've never really put it in the lit RPG genre.
Took off.
It's definitely more game lit.
Yeah,
is where I would put it. And not even self-identified as game lit. It just has those elements like Tron does.
Yeah,
and lots of other books that, if you're on any of the Facebook groups, there's at least one post a day usually that it's like, what do you guys think? Is this lit RPG? And everyone's like, no, it doesn't have stats.
And then
it's not lit RPG.
And then there's the ones that are like, they're not lit RPG, but some of our favorites, and we're like, oh yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and incorporate it into the game lit RPG genre. Biggest example I can think of is Andrew Rose books, like Arcane Ascension,
any like
or Brook of Mirrors,
or Dungeon.
Yeah, Cradle gets bundled in there a lot.
Cradle does.
Everyone recommends Cradle on the lit RPG pages.
Well, and when you have
series,
I
just
powerhouse,
got done with Dreadgod.
When you have a powerhouse of both Will White and Travis Baldry working together, like, it's just, they're an unstoppable force at this point.
Right? Exactly.
Which the next book in that series is the last book, I think. The 13th is going to be the end, so I'm...
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sad about that.
I'll have to brace for that. Well, that's like Expeditionary Force is coming to an end too. I love that series, but it's the end of that series. It might not be the end of those characters.
Right.
Like the authors may always come back to those characters. The end of Cradle might just be Lyndon leaving Cradle, and then the next series, it's a sequel series, right? That is about as an Abaddon or whatever. So
the Olympians was the end of just the Greek mythology, but then we get the heroes of whatever, and the son of Neptune is essentially just Percy Jackson. I think it actually is Percy Jackson. How many books do you think Z will be?
I have always expected 6 or 7.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I'm expecting. I think this third book will kind of be the capstone or the mid, on kind of the first arc, and then and kind of the midpoint of the series is what I'm hoping. So,
all right. So let's go back to. I want to talk about the short stories idea because I want to pick your brain a little bit. One thing I would love to see. You don't have to write this specifically for me. Just saying. I'd love to see more of Mocha before she met Z. Like, I want to see an adventure of her, like in the early days of her getting into the game and building her character, because that would be really cool.
It's funny. I don't know that it'll happen, but I had this I don't know, instinct or this desire to do a prologue for book 3 that was going to be how Maka originally becomes an inmate and gets arrested. And I've been hesitant to break out of Z's point of view. But there's actually some reasons to do it for book 3 a little bit. So I don't know if it'll happen, but it's definitely in the cards. If anyone's getting some standalone content, it's probably Maka.
Yay! I really like her character, and not only because she's, named after one of my favorite anime characters, but anyways.
I mean, we get a lot of, I'm just thinking of, who has, enough of a story that would be interesting to do.
I'd love to see some NPC backstories, too.
Well, yeah, that'd be cool. I was going to say that we get a lot of, Limericks story just because he goes through his file and, and then I really don't feel like I'd read a book about some megacorp stooge, but it could be good. I mean,
I'd read about the Doctor.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. Like an AI spinoff.
I'd be down for that.
Good to know.
So listeners, what I'm trying to say is, don't sleep on this series. Listen or buy these books because they're good. They have a lot of good characters. Yeah, we're not going in depth as we normally do with certain things, but we're trying a new structure. I don't know how well it's working, but we're trying. So I'm trying to think of some final thoughts before we start wrapping up and everything.
Do you want to talk more about any character development or the Doctor? Because we didn't really talk about him much.
Let's talk about the Doctor a little bit. I mean, because for character development, the only character that really, I guess, has the super progressive would be. We just keep saying his name, and I want to call him Lysander. Limerick. Thank you. I have Shakespeare on my mind for some reason. I just want to say Lysander every time. Limerick is the only one that I feel gets the super character development because Z's always been noble.
Yeah.
From the start, he's very noble, so it's hard to kind of go more on the noble side, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It just stumbles me a little bit because.
Well, he doesn't really have that much gaming experience, I think, right?
No? Justin? You want to back us up here?
That Z doesn't have much gaming experience?
Right.
Not in the modern games of Overworld Online. He's... I throw out there that he's done some tabletop RPGs, and he's probably played some old emulators and ROMs because he could get them online. but he hasn't, other than he's logged into Overworld before in a short-term connection, but always to kind of go out and party and not to, like in the clubbing sense, and not to go out and adventure. So that's definitely where he didn't have to worry about his stats before. He could be a level 0 nothing, you know.
So that does kind of, I guess, play into character development, because he does have to learn his stats and everything.
Sure.
Which, I mean, which is good for a main character to have. Because, like, yeah, we get those expert players in there, and it's like, okay, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. Because they either game their entire life or anything. So not having a gaming character is actually kind of a fun aspect to have.
So I totally just thought about it, but someone who I would like to hear more about is Z's mom. Where she's like, yeah, I used to be a badass warlock drow or something. I think that's...
She was a warlock, yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
It's also awesome that his mom is a super hacker.
Right?
Well, with a little bit of help from the doctor. A little bit of implied help from the doctor.
Zeckler, you gotta let me know when you're gonna post a spoiler like that in the chat.
Uh-oh.
Zeckler.
I can't see the chat. Am I supposed to see the chat?
Oh, I just have it up on... it's through OBS, and then we have the Twitch up on our phone, so that way I can see the chat a little more efficiently. Zeckler, oops, you're not getting banned. Don't worry. You're too valuable to us. We need you.
Oh, man.
Let's talk about the doctor. Tell us where you were wanting to go with the doctor originally, and how you ended up with where we are with the doctor.
Trying to figure out what I can say.
Right.
I don't know what Zeckler just posted, but
he just said it's all. The only thing we have from Zeckler is it's also awesome that his mom is a super hacker, and then oops.
Okay. I'm not sure what the oops was.
When I yelled at him about spoilers.
Gotcha.
No, we are in spoiler territory, so you are... For our listeners, before we start wrapping up, we're going to have a quick little spoiler section to discuss certain things, aka the doctor right now. So we are fine for spoilers.
The doctor is... I mean, started out from that desire to introduce something weird and special about Z, being how his brain processes cryptocurrency. And I needed someone to explain that to him and to introduce the larger arc of what Z has to deal with other than just serving out his prison term. And I will say as much as I can is that just not everything is as it seems with the doctor. And he has to walk this line between restrictions in his programming and his own agenda. And all of that to say, like, I wanted a fun and mysterious character that I could throw into other settings too, and I've thought of David Tennant for being perfect to, toss into being Doc Holliday and in one world or one dream, and various other characters, and I just love the image of him putting on these different faces. So I pulled one of my favorite actors. I think I had just been watching Jessica Jones too.
Kilgrave. That's one of my favorite roles of his.
Which just let me see him in a whole different light.
If that was if that was the first time you've watched it, yeah. No, that's David Tennant as a villain is terrifying, especially when you have him as Kilgrave.
Well, and moving from my main other reference to him was as the Doctor. Who's probably as he can be terrifying, but is generally mischievous and joyful and excitement. So just so very, very different. And I was like, well, then, it's just a fun visual for me as I write to see where else I could drop that face into. So,
well, I mean, he also played Barty Crouch Jr. in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So.
True.
Everyone
I
always
have trouble
forgets
seeing
about
him
Reminds
in
me
that
of a
role.
Yeah.
wizard.
Like, I have trouble seeing him through the character in that role. So I forget that that's David Tennant very often,
Everyone does.
which is, I guess, a compliment to him.
I mean, also everyone forgets Robert Pattinson was in that. So
Oh, yeah. He
Ced-
was
Cedric Diggory.
Cedric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and start wrapping up and give our final thoughts. Joel, what are your final thoughts?
I like it. It's a good book.
It's a good book.
Yeah.
We're gonna pick up book 2 and power through that because we meant to do that before.
Yeah, it's been
This
on
show-
our wish list, or not wish list, but backlog for
For a hot minute.
yeah.
I've got plenty of titles lingering on my wish list for to get snatched up. So
We'll have to send you one of the titles on your wish list then to get you going. As,
I've
as
got
an,
plenty in the library to be listened to too. So
well, it's as an appreciation of being on the show.
oh, thank you.
So, but no, series is really good. I'm very excited to see where book 2 goes since it is out on Audible. Which the cover for book 2 I love too.
Yeah.
It just looks goofier than the second one, and I like it for a lot more. I like the more cartoony style it kind of gives.
Well, and I'm just starting to talk to the artist about the cover for book 3. So
Beautiful.
that should have a very different feel too.
I hope we can get more food in book 3. The perfect bite to get some hard times before lunch.
More food. Oh, okay.
I guess that's
going back to like
book 2 or
book 2 has a very it's Thanksgiving at the beginning of book 2.
Gotcha.
And I describe Z getting the perfect bite of a Thanksgiving plate fairly early on. That's not spoiling too much, but I think someone did call it food porn at one point.
Ooh, nothing wrong with that. We love good food especially because I started meal prepping now and I hate it.
Yeah.
Ah, damn it! I
feel that.
Speaking of which, I gotta cook some rice before I go to work. All right. So, last little thing we like to do before we end the show is, hey Joel, what have you been reading?
Oh man, I didn't even have it pulled up. Might need to come back to me.
All right, I'll go ahead and start. The other day when I was out in the wild world of life, went to a Target and I found a copy of the Beginning After the End manga. And those who know me, I love the Beginning After the End. It's one of my favorite series. I've talked about it and praised it quite a bit, while also yelling at Travis Baldree for having such an amazing performance. It actually had me tear up in the middle of work when I was listening to a book. I've also been reading the Eternal Dominion series by Bern Dean. I also picked up books 3 through 7 and powered through some of those because, series is really good. I picked up Bleeding Edge by Matt Babler, and we actually have him coming up as a show guest in November, which
Good guy.
series is narrated by Heath Miller, and I know Joel loves his He Who Fights with Monsters, so same thing, so I know he's going to love it. Cyber Squad, level 3, dropped on Audible, so I've already read it, but I picked it up on Audible just because, 1, gotta support Anna, and 2, it's good. It's really good. It's really, really good. And other than that, I finally got around to actually listening to some of the He Who Fights with Monsters books, so Joel will quit yelling at me. But that's what I've been reading. Oh, tomorrow I will be listening to the newest book in the Artorian Archives, because that drops.
Ooh, heck yeah.
All right, Joel.
Yeah, so I finally got around to listening to the most recent book in the Idol system, Redo. I also listened to Queen in the Mud. Respawned as a salamander, and it's really good. They did a really good job. I've honestly been looking through, our Litter PG Reddit, because they do a lot of,
There's a lot in there.
They'll, see which books they like the best or whatever. So I've been going through that. And then I also saw Alpha Physics on there. So I started that series. And, yeah.
Is that it?
Well, I mean, I did recently start a re-listen to Dungeon Crawler Carl. But it sounds like I'm going to be listening to some Artorian's Archive soon.
That's going to be our book when we go to the gym tomorrow, so.
Yeah, probably.
All right. And, Justin, since you're our honorary guest, what have you been listening to or reading?
I'm just looking at it here now. So I've got about 2 hours left in the Gilded Ghost, which is the
Ripple
third
System
book in the
3.
Ripple system.
Yeah.
And then I've got queued up to listen to. I've got Mana Harvest.
That one's good. I really like that one.
Yeah. I want to do some more slice of life listening because I think that'll factor into my next series. And then I picked up The Law by Jim Butcher, which is the Dresden Files novella.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked that up during the Audible sale, so that's queued up.
Is that the one that's got the multicast? I think Travis is a part of that.
I don't think so. That one's it says it's narrated by Jim Butcher. So
okay, because I know there was one that he released and it had like a bunch of names on it, and
I know he's done some of the short story compilations, but even most of those are by James Marsters.
Okay.
Who's just amazing. And then my wife and I are listening to Project Hail Mary when we're in the car together. I've done it before, but she hadn't. And I just finished The Last Emperor by John Scalzi.
Okay.
And Dread God by Will White. And Flat Out, the second book in the System Apocalypse Australia series by Tao Wong and KT Hana. So
I've been meaning to start that.
Which one?
I listen at 2x speed, so I go through books pretty fast.
Yeah, Zekler just put in the chat that this guy's listening at 2x speed, so it's pretty much cheating.
It is cheating.
I can't go above more than 1.2. It really takes my.
It took me. I had to inch it up over time.
Here's the thing. I want to listen to the performance that the narrators are giving me. I can't. If I fast forward, it feels like I'm cheating and skipping past their beautiful performances.
I think for me, it just depends on how relatable the book is and how much Rich just needs me to finish it before we start the show.
Oh yeah, dive into Cyber Squad. Thank you.
Yeah, I need to listen to that one next.
But that's ow, sorry, that came out of nowhere. So that kind of wraps it up for our episode for today. Justin, thank you so much for joining us and bearing with us for the technical difficulties, because I know we went to do this last night and then the night before, but I had work, and then last night Photoshop decided, hey, we hate everyone, and crashed our entire system. Because, yeah, we love Adobe here. Adobe overlords. The fuck?
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure. I've been listening to the pod when I'm not listening to audiobooks. I do podcasts at 2.5 speed. So
oh god, that must sound horrible for us.
It makes everyone sound super snappy and witty and like they're written by Aaron Sorkin. So
I'll take it as a compliment. I'll
sound even more like a chipmunk.
All right, but we do have some fun shows coming up soon. We have HP Hollow coming up on the 30th, which I need to message her to see if we can do the 31st, because we have a Halloween party that no one told me about.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I told you about it.
After I already booked her. We have Stephen Landry coming up on the 23rd, which so we have like 2 shows back to back. And then Burn Dean coming up in November, as well as Matt Babler, which it's just going to be that's going to
be fun scheduling because he's in Australia, right?
Yes, so I've already talked to him about it. So the time we normally stream for us is going to be like 10 a.m. for him.
Right.
So
that's not too bad.
It works perfectly to have that, as long as the system for us decides it doesn't want to crash, because
love it.
I try not to swear that much anymore, but fuck.
Oh, we just got the explicit tag.
We always get the explicit tag, especially when I'm involved in a project, which is oh well. But Once again, this has been Stats on Stats. Justin, thank you again for joining us. This was actually a really fun time on an episode. Joel, I don't have to say thank you. I'm sitting next to you. I don't really. Oh, thank you, baby.
Well, I'll say thank you to Joel.
See, there you go. You get thank you from an author.
There you go.
There's your gratification for the day. But this has been Stats on Stats for everything Lit RPG, Game Lit, and Dungeon Core. We appreciate you tuning in. Have a wonderful time.